Our next conversation, straight to matters. The IMF put out a report, the fifth review report. Gentlemen, thank you. A fifth review report, and a number of things that they touched on. They diagnosed our recovery process and then the compliance to the program, the External Credit Facility, ECF program, as largely satisfactory. That was the expression, largely satisfactory. I mean that, yes, I mean, we've met almost all targets, some of them that were reviewed, you know, they are asking for an extension, which we'll get into. But this is one topical area that in the report we generated some conversation about some $214 million loss that they say that the Gold for Reserves program, you remember this administration took over and then they did away with the Gold for Oil program, and now they introduced the Gold G4R. So there was the G4O and then the G4R. Yeah. So there's the Gold for Oil. Now we have the Gold for Reserve program. According to the IMF, in 2025 through end of quarter three of 2025, losses from the artisanal and small-scale mining gold transactions component of the Gold for Reserves have reached $214 million. Mostly on trading losses, but also on GoldBod off-takers fees. Take note of that. The GoldBod off-takers fees, that's what they put it. The rapidly expanding scale of the program, particularly since the creation of GoldBod, could expose Ghana to heightened risks. The large and increasing scale of the Gold for Reserves program, notably since the creation of GoldBod, is a source of significant downside risk. And they say that the domestic gold purchase program poses risk to the financial sustainability of the Bank of Ghana. The other aspect of the report we'll get into. But then there was a swift response from the CEO of GoldBod indicating that GoldBod has not made losses. So then where is the loss? Okay? Who is swallowing the loss or taking the loss? Rather, the GoldBod has made significant profit. And in fact, he references the unaudited accounts of GoldBod published on their website. If you go to the GoldBod website, you will find this on unedited accounts. But then it's being audited now. So then again, but then it posts what he is talking about, that there is indeed some appreciable and significant profit or surplus published on the website. They bear the fact that GoldBod is set to declare income surplus of less than 600 million, something not less than 600 million Ghana cedis for the year 2025 alone. And he explains the selling or trading of gold purchased by GoldBod to off-takers lies in the exclusive domain of the Bank of Ghana. So then we are being pointed to probably where this loss might be. He said the GoldBod is not aware of any $214 million loss incurred by the Bank of Ghana under the Gold for Reserve program on account of GoldBod off-takers. It says there's nothing like GoldBod off-takers for that matter. And this is it. It says for the record, there is nothing like GoldBod off-takers fees under this artisanal small-scale mining gold trading program. That assertion is incorrect. The GoldBod per its operations does not deal with off-takers. Neither does the GoldBod charge any off-taker fees. All off-taker agreements are signed and also executed by the Bank of Ghana. Well, so the Bank of Ghana also put out a statement which essentially corroborates some of the things that the GoldBod put out. But the most critical part of the statement is say these accounts are being audited and they will publish as demanded of them by the first quarter of 2026. And so they describe the IMF's statement in their report as largely speculative, right? Dr. Stuart Champo is on Zoom. I'm going to hold him on in a bit. He's repositioning to join us, but also joining us on Zoom is Sammy Gyamfi, is the CEO of GoldBod, and then to make this quick intervention on a number of things, some specific issues that you raised, and then also in direct response to that aspect of the IMF report. He's joining us on Zoom as well. Mr. Gyamfi, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Alfred, and best wishes of the season to your esteemed panelists.
Thank you very much, and we wish you same as well. First of all, there's the statement that you put earlier in the week, in responding to the IMF $214 million loss. I have read it in full. We've subjected it to some discussion. The question that Professor Bobkin and Professor Patrick Esumin asks is how you sell gold across all value chains and still make a loss. They want a clarification, and then also the pricing regime that you use specifically. Mr. Gyamfi.
All right, thank you very much. I think this is by far the most fundamental issue that I've heard anybody commenting on this matter raised so far. And so I intend to focus on it and explain. A special greetings to Prof. Bobkin, who taught me financial management during my EPM program at the University of Ghana. But before I do that, I think there are some preliminary issues that we need to clarify. The impression is being created by some, not your panelists per se, but by some, as though the GoldBod has made losses and is shying away from acknowledging that it has made losses. Alfred, the GoldBod is not a typical commercial venture established for the main purpose of making profits. The GoldBod is a strategic corporation with two objects: foreign exchange generation for the country and supporting gold reserve accumulation by the Bank of Ghana. And that is why, if you look at the GoldBod Act, nowhere in the Act is the word profit used, rather the word surplus is used. We are mandate-driven and not necessarily profit-driven. And so if we even make losses in the discharge of our mandate, we will be very happy to concede that and to show how that loss came about and the benefits of that loss, if any. And so nobody is shying away from losses. Facts are sacrosanct. The GoldBod is barely 8 months old. Per Section 76 of the GoldBod Act, it took over the assets, liabilities, contracts of the defunct Precious Minerals Marketing Company. So for the first year that the GoldBod has been in operation, our financials are available. We have not made losses. We have rather made surpluses. And we have published our financials as required by law, our quarterly financials on our website. And anybody can go and check. So the IMF has not said the GoldBod has made losses. And it is important that we put that matter to rest. The GoldBod has not made losses. And if the GoldBod makes a loss, the GoldBod will not shy away from that. The reason why the lawmaker in drafting the GoldBod Act did not use the word profit and loss is because that is not the main object. You understand? And so why would we even shy away from that if we've made losses? We have made surpluses. And latest by February or March next year, when external auditors audit our books, that will... Alfred, yes. The suggestion is being made that the Bank of Ghana is making losses and the Bank of Ghana is shying away from the losses. The Bank of Ghana says that the statement put out by the IMF that in their country reports that it made $240 million from January to September of this year under the Gold for Reserve program is speculative. It means the Bank of Ghana is shying away from losses. That is not true. Why? Bank of Ghana, why would Bank of Ghana shy? Bank of Ghana has been making consecutive losses. In 2022, it made a loss of 60.8 billion. In 2023, it made a loss of 10.5 billion cedis. In 2024, it made a loss of 9.4 billion. Nobody was crucified in this country. And so if all the IMF is saying is that Bank of Ghana has made a loss of $214 million, equivalent to $2.5 billion, that will even be a reduction of the recurring losses of the Bank of Ghana. Why would the Bank of Ghana run away from that? What the Bank of Ghana is saying is this. I have been in meetings with the Bank of Ghana and the IMF, in which the Bank of Ghana has told the IMF that there are issues of accounting and financial reporting surrounding the Gold for Reserve program, that it has referred to its external auditors for resolution, and that how those cost items are treated in the financials can impact the level of profits or losses. And so the IMF should exercise patience and allow its external auditors resolve the issues. And in that meeting, the IMF agreed. So we are not just saying that, oh, management accounts are not available, and that it is only when external audits are concluded that losses can be ascertained. No. They are critical issues of financial reporting and accounting treatment principles for the financials surrounding the Gold for Reserve program that the Bank of Ghana has discussed with the IMF. Their disagreements and same have been referred to its external auditors. And so all the Bank of Ghana is saying is that let that process conclude so that we can have a fair, balanced picture. The Bank of Ghana is not running away from any $214 million losses, which in any case is far lesser than the recurring losses the Bank of Ghana has been making in the last 3 years. Let's make that preliminary point also very clear.
Okay.
Now, you must understand that the GoldBod, like I said, is barely 8 months. Has this year now put in place the institutional framework for its operations and all that. Okay? So the GoldBod concept, as envisioned under the GoldBod Act, has not taken off. And I have put that on record already. But because the GoldBod took over the PMMC, the GoldBod inherited the PMMC's existing contract with the Bank of Ghana under the Domestic Gold Purchase Program, which basically is that, and will advance funds to PMMC, now GoldBod, as its agents to buy gold, assay the gold, and export the gold to off-takers of the Bank of Ghana. Now, this program started, as you are aware, in 2022. And when the program was being launched, this domestic gold purchase program was being launched, the object, the policy design was not for profit. And that is what I want my revered lecturer, Professor Bobkin, to understand. He says that why can't we, as a country, be able to sell gold and break even or make profit? No, that was not the policy design. To sell gold and make profit is easy. You just have to know your cost, and you just have to price at a discount that absorbs your cost and gives you a margin as profit. That is easy. Anybody can do that. But in 2022, when this program was being launched, the Bank of Ghana knew at the time that gold was already being bought in the open market by all manner of people, mostly foreigners, at the black market rate, the informal exchange rate, retail rate, if I can put it that way, and at the world market price, within a discount range of 1% to 2%. And you can ask any gold trader, That was how gold was being bought in 2021, 2022, 2023. That is how gold has always been bought.
I see.
So when Bank of Ghana was coming in, Bank of Ghana was not like GoldBod. PMMC did not have the market regulation and enforcement powers that the GoldBod has to deal with leakages and smuggling. And so the Bank of Ghana decided to use price to fend off smugglers so that it will get gold for FX, knowing very well that there will be an intrinsic cost or losses. And that is why on 1st December 2022, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Napo, in his directives to gold traders as part of the rollout of the Gold for Oil program at paragraph 4, announced that the PMMC will be buying gold for the Bank of Ghana at spot price. Spot price. Nobody buys gold at spot price for the purpose of making profit. Because when you buy at spot, you can sell at spot. Dory is sold at discount to take account of freight, insurance, handling charges, to take account of commissions of buyers and all that. So you obviously run at a loss. But the policy justification was that we needed the forex so bad to bring about macroeconomic stability, the benefits of which will make that loss infinitesimal. That is the whole point. So it is not about somebody not having the ability to. Why did government scrap? You see, the NPP introduced a withholding tax of 3% on gold purchases in 2023. That was the year that gold output was the lowest in Ghana's history, owing to smuggling. 3%. It later reduced it to 1.5%. When the NDC came, we took the 1.5% tax from the price of Dory. Now, the cost on gold purchases is about 5%. So to say that you want to make profit means you have to buy gold at minimum 5% discount. That is almost double the tax that was introduced in 2023 that ensured that we lost all the gold and all the FX stayed in Dubai and India. And the Ghanaian became the poorer. The economy became the poorer. And so let's understand the policy from this perspective. Now again, to the most fundamental issue of pricing. GoldBod, and for that matter, Bank of Ghana, can be profit conscious and say we want to price to make profit. We are pricing at 5% discount. That will help us to absorb all our costs and make us break even. But we know that once we do that, we will lose all the gold and there will be no forex to stabilize the currency. And when you lose control of your currency, you lose control of inflation, and cost of living will go up the roofs and your people will suffer. And so what do? We say, okay, what we will do is that we will change the exchange rate denominator in the price calculation from the historic retail rate, which has been used all these years, and bring it to interbank. Prof, by doing that, GoldBod has already discounted the local price of gold by more than 10% already. So to slap another discount on the world market price will make our price uncompetitive and only deepen the leakages and defeat the whole essence of the program. That is why we price this way. But we know that even if what the IMF is saying is true, that we've incurred costs, okay, of $214 million, even if that is true. Prof taught me economics. He knows that there is a cost to everything. If Ghana went to the Eurobond market to borrow $10 billion, we will be paying interest of not less than 10%, true or false.
Okay.
That is more than $1 billion. It comes, $214 million comes nowhere close to that. By pricing this way and bringing $10 billion, the CD has appreciated by almost 35%. First time in Ghana's history since 2007. The inflation rate has reduced by 11 consecutive months from 23.8% to 6.3%. Food prices have gone down by 32%. In terms of savings to the country, let me tell you this, because in this country, we know the value of everything but the cost of nothing. Let me tell you the value. And
why you round up for me?
Yes, why I round up. For 2025, the government has spent $1.8 billion in servicing its external debt. Another $1.8 billion in paying IPPs. That is together $3.6 billion.
Okay.
If government serviced that $3.6 billion debt at an exchange rate of 15 cedis, which we inherited, without the intervention of GoldBod and what we are talking about today, the $10 billion inflows, it would have cost the country 15 billion cedis more. We would have to convert 15 billion cedis more to service that debt.
Okay.
I have not even spoken about the import bill. Let me tell you something. We are talking about January to September. The import bill from January to September 2025 is $11.8 billion. Do the math. If importers imported those goods at 16 cities, as compared to an average exchange rate of 12 cities, we would have lost an extra 52 billion cedis.
There are a number of things that you point to.
$240 million. That is why the Bank of Ghana, that is why the IMF itself is not able to say that the program is bad and that we should stop.
And in fact, the
IMF is saying, Alfred, just 1 second. What the IMF is saying is that it is fine. This is good. You have met your foreign reserve target for 2028. In 2025, it's unimaginable. We never even thought you could do this.
Right.
But we don't want the cost. IMF is saying we don't want the cost to sit in the books of the Bank of Ghana. And we have said that, okay, where should it sit? Whether it sits in the books of GoldBod or the Ministry of Finance, it is sitting in the books of Ghana.
Okay, so thank you.
We have now come up with reforms for 2026, because from 2026, GoldBod will now take off fully. And we have told the IMF that when we take off fully, some of these issues that you are concerned is impacting the books of Bank of Ghana will become a turn of the past.
Will be dealt with. So then that answers the question about the way forward.
The price mechanisms that GoldBod will be introducing.
Great.
But let's understand these issues.
Thank you very much, Sammy Gyamfi, for this. In fact, I asked those two questions, and then the explanation that we have got now. Prof. Bobkin, I'll come to you. The explanation that we've got now, does it bring some clarity and context to the issues? He mentions quite a number of things that addresses some of the issues that you raise. That
but
there is a cost.
Have made me comment on the issue of Gyamfi and the environmental cost and that argument that Prof. Bobkin made, because you see, it is very.
Okay, Sammy, I'll come to you on that.
The environmental cost and all that. Just 1 minute, I beg you.
Quickly,
You have
in a second, because I need to move on. So
I beg you, just give me 60 seconds, time me. Prof, and we know the environmental cost of mining. And that is why when we took over and there was no fight against illegal mining, we didn't maintain the status quo. Today there is a fight. LI 2423 has been revoked. Mining is no longer permissible in forest reserves. NIMOS is cracking down on illegal miners everywhere. You have seen the videos on TV3. This cannot be a government that sets up an institution like GoldBod to promote traceability. GoldBod, which has now made it a crime under Section 59 of our Act to buy for anybody, any of our licensees, to buy illegal mining gold. Can you say that institution promoting
I read
traceability?
the IMF report. The IMF report references. Sorry, the IMF report references this traceability you talk about. That it's a process that you are going to roll out going forward. Is it already in place that you're able to trace?
Ghana has been buying gold since the colonial eras. We are now being told that why haven't you introduced traceability in 8 months? When, for how many decades we have not done? We have given you timelines by which this traceability program will be in place. And every gold bought by the state will be traced to its mine of origin, which must be a sustainable mine. And you want to crucify an institution that has been in office for 8 months. When people were doing gold for oil and gold for FX and all that, we didn't hear all these arguments.
Okay. Well, so there are a number of things that Sammy Gyamfi points out, and it's important because it brings some clarity or context to the issues. One, that there is a cost to everything, but then you square it up with the benefit of what is at stake. He references barely 8 months that the GoldBod has been in operation. He outlines the impact and benefits over the period. And then also, Professor Walkin, he says it's not a policy design of GoldBod to sell gold and make profit. That's number one. And he explains quite into some detail. And the institutional concept of GoldBod has not fully taken off as yet. And we will see the full fledging of it from next year. And there's been some timelines as well, especially because now we're getting some signal that they're going to take over the entire process, and the Bank of Ghana would have very little or nothing to do in the entire process. And the fact that they inherited the already existing contract between the Bank of Ghana and PMMC, even though there is now PMMC being transformed into GoldBod. And the fact that the Bank of Ghana decided to use pricing to fend off smuggling, okay? Knowing that there will be a cost or losses. So there's some sense of awareness that this was going to happen. But it was a pricing mechanism meant to address a particular challenge. Does that answer the issues for you? I'll start off with you, Lawyer Abdullah, and then
because you
gentlemen, Prof. Gentlemen, because you haven't spoken on this, I'll just signal. You haven't spoken on it. So you take it up, and then
absolutely,
I'll take the last comment from the two professors.
Yes. Yes. All right. So thank you, Alfred. I have been paying serious attention to all the discussions going on. For once, I enjoyed being a listener than being the one talking. And it's genuinely so because I cannot pretend to know it all. I am also a learner, and so it is humbling sometimes to know from the experts and then to know how you also guide your comment and your thoughts around some of these subjects. But outside of the technicalities, I was asking myself a number of questions. That we have an organization, an institution that has been set up for barely 9 months. And across the country, all stakeholders, everybody commends that institution for doing so well. And so my opinion was really that would a $200 million loss within the first year, assuming it was even the loss of GoldBod, I mean, however you want to look at it, be a basis to judge the quality of that institution? I think that would be a disservice if you rely solely on that. But luckily for us, nobody has made that judgment, value judgment, based on the basis of the 200 million. And so it's just a rhetorical with that response. And then looking at it from that angle, I also look at it from the other perspective. Would it be fair to say that on the basis of this 100 million, we are getting, 200 million loss, we are getting value for money? I think that if you look at it from that angle, I think the resounding response would be that indeed, yes, we are getting value for money. This is a very good institution, establishment that is getting us arguably one of the best benefits that we have ever had in our almost 70-year life as a country. Now, if all the answers are in favor of that institution and there are seeming difficulties, even if you rely on the losses alone, and without all the explanations coming from Sammy Gyamfi and all of that, would it be a fair argument to say that we reform, strengthen, and make this institution a better one for our collective good? If the answer is yes, then I'm all for it. In which case, then my argument is that let's do some amount of introspection, but not within 8 months. Obviously not. Maybe, I think to be fair, most institutions will do introspections maybe after 3 years, 5 years. That's what the economists probably would call a medium term. But if in the short term, 1 year, you want to do some introspection to identify lapses, weaknesses, and to pluck all those lapses and weaknesses, and then strengthen the areas that you're doing so well in order to be able to gain so much of the institution's establishment. I think that would be a good way of assessing the situation than the narrative, in fact, that the unspoken narrative, making it look like, even though we are not saying you're bad, but you still appear bad in a way. And because, of course, unfortunately, cannot blame anyone because the entire GoldBod has a sister policy prior to that, which is the Gold for Oil, and how the heavy losses were incurred at the time. And so it is just normal to expect these feelings from Ghanaians and policy think tanks that, if you find these arguments coming from them, if you find these reservations coming from some of the comments, I think it's understandable. You shouldn't condemn them because we have experienced a way awful situation in the last few years. And so nobody would want a repetition of gold for oil in this quality one that we have established now. So I think that it is very disheartening. I mean, if you are in the shoes of the policymakers who established this gold for a GoldBod. Okay. It will be disheartening, but you should also genuinely assess the sentiment why people feel the way they do. Okay. And that if you can take that on board, I think we can better shape the GoldBod and make it a better institution for our collective good. Which he has indicated that there's the institutional concept of GoldBod will be fully fledged. However, in saying that, so I was saying, in a few seconds, I was asking that I keep hearing the same narrative about artisanal mining. Now, how different are these from, galamseyers? I mean, beyond the English, what's the difference between the two? So my question really is, no, in fact, there's no difference. So you see, one is irresponsible mining. The other is supposed to be a regulated responsible mining. One is responsible, not supposed to be. But no, supposed to be. It is supposed to be. Okay. My point here is this. If it is supposed to be, how far are we going with ensuring that it is indeed as regulated and responsible as it is, as it's supposed to be? Right. Now, if all those questions are not answered, we may be endangering ourselves in the quest to build a better country. Professor Patrick, assuming just some quick responses to at least the intervention, and then Sammy responded to some of the concerns that you raised earlier, specifically about the pricing mechanism. He has explained the value addition, the pricing mechanism effect, and what the objective of the pricing mechanism was. So, and the fact that there was some awareness there was going to be some losses.
So I think that from the outset, there's been no condemnation of the GoldBod, what it stands for and what it's doing. So I think we should make that clear. But what we have to understand is that, as economists, economists have ways of counting costs, which tend to be more extensive than other people will. And so I think when you are valuing what you have done, and I think, it seems to me that there's been a bit of a shift in position from the statement that was issued. The statement come across as a statement in defiance and questioning, for instance, saying it's not aware of any losses. I think that, when institutions of state are doing things and people are making commentary, it shouldn't always be interpreted as an attack. After all, this is for the country of Ghana. So I think that, but when he says that, oh, yes, we knew there would be losses, and that, the benefit outweigh the cost. Well, that's his view. That's his point of view. Because if we want to know the full value that we are getting from this program, it's accounting for this, and the IMF was very specific, trading losses, and off-taker fees. All of that has to be put together before even the GoldBod put out their profit statement, because at the end of the day, it is part of the whole arrangement that is generating the loss. The other loss that we haven't accounted for, yes, we've admitted it, but the environmental damage, and nobody is saying that the environmental damage started with the GoldBod. Yeah. But, you know, I think it's still a cost to society that we have to account for. So, you know, it's not a condemnation. I think the GoldBod itself would have helped itself if its initial reporting was also balanced. Because if we heard this is what you have generated, this and this what has cost us, then also helps us to put everything in the proper context. So it's not a condemnation, but you know, you just have to be willing to accept that there are costs, and the country of Ghana have to decide how we deal with these costs. All right. As we are enjoying the benefit. We have to, so at the moment the cost has been shifted to the central bank. Is that the best way to deal with that? And I think it's a legitimate question for people to ask that these losses, where are they coming from? What can we do to minimize the losses? And because when we minimize the losses, after all, whatever benefit comes is for the whole of the country. So it's still a legitimate question. I think clearly the position that he's taking now, it seems a little different from what you read from just the statement that was put out.
Right. Prof. Bofkin, just finally on this.
Thank you. I mean, I want to thank the CEO of GoldBod. I think he's done well. I started off by acknowledging the role of the GoldBod in crowding.
I don't think there's been any wrong condemnation.
So government should not take it that we are opposed to that. I think there's a certain feeling also that we could do better within the whole landscape of responsible mining. Remember that in the run-up to 2024, even in the face of election, there was quite considerable level of agitation about galamsey, responsible mining. We even called for a state of emergency and all of that. Yes, I can understand that after election, that seemed not to be that popular now. But we have to, at the end of the day, sometimes when you are looking at cost-benefit analysis, the benefit may be now and you are seeing it, but the cost may be, and if we have lost a life, children are born with deformities and all of that, what benefit could be compared to life and all of that? And I'm also saying that we are not against GoldBod. I'm saying that Ghana, we should be able to do responsible mining after several decades of independence and all of that. And then also the point that we are making is that we need to insulate Bank of Ghana from fiscal and quasi-fiscal activities that impairs the balance sheet of Bank of Ghana. I think that is where the IMF is coming from. Okay. And we all understand that. And it's a reason, Alfred, is a reason under the 16th IMF program from April 3rd, 2015, with 1 year extension to April 2019, we reduced the deficit financing from 10% to 5% of government previous year's fiscal revenue, just to limit the exposure. Then under the current IMF program, we have resorted to zero financing. But there are other quasi-fiscal activities that are being loaded on the balance sheet of Bank of Ghana that looks like fiscal dominance is showing up. Okay. Even though we've gone through a lot to insulate the central bank. And I think this is good for the Bank of Ghana itself. Because you see, anytime we are outside IMF, Bank of Ghana become too susceptible to fiscal pressures. Okay. So anytime we are under IMF, that is also a shield. Okay. For the fund. That's so right. Let's look at it from that perspective.
It is the broader perspective, yes, or the context.
Of operational independence for the central bank. Right. Remember, the IMF program will be ending. In fact, technically, it was supposed to have ended December this year. There is 3-month extension, and perhaps all the review may conclude somewhere July. When we exit, there may be issues about whether Bank of Ghana can continue to maintain that independence we fought for. Which is good for confidence and all of that. So let's look at it within that context.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. You know, the IMF has requested that government considers a 3-month extension.
It's not IMF that requested. It's Ghana government that requested.
That's contrary to what I'm reading in this.
No.
In this
Read the heading.
So,
read the heading from the IMF report.
Because this
This
extension, because they said they want to, because there are some targets that have been revised.
Because we did not meet some of those structural reforms within the program timeline, and we have shifted. Remember, it is Ghana government program being supported by the IMF. Okay, so you read the entire report. The request is from us. It has to come from us. Even though if the IMF reacts for it, it has to come from us.
So I think I mean, when you look this particular review, the fifth review, I think it just you get a sense that IMF is a little more concerned than perhaps it was even in the fourth review.
So this is what the report says. I just wanted to pull that part of the report. It says the extension through August 16, 2026 would help reach an understanding of the policy supporting completion of the sixth review, while allowing sufficient time to prepare and circulate board documents. Proposed program modifications, the IMF proposing modifications to Ghana's current program, including changes to the indicative targets, that's ITs, and the monetary policy consultation clause. At the end of March 2026, the primary balance and non-oil, they give all of that detail, and essentially making the point that to the extent that there has been some modifications to the policy targets, an extension through August 2026 would help reach an understanding on the policy supporting completion of the sixth review.
Yes. So look at it. So read it. When you read the entire report and you read the executive director for Ghana and the establishment and the technical memorandum of understanding, all of that, you see where this is coming from. So you just need to look at the whole picture. Remember, originally it is Ghana government that requested for this program.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We went to them.
We went to them. So all the arrangement is almost like coming from us, even though the IMF will also make suggestions that given the reform and all of that, I think, in fact, Alfred, I said this when the 2026 budget was presented, that I'm expecting a technical extension of about 3 months for us to wrap up well. I said this even before it was captured.
Indeed,
here.
that I remember.
And I referenced what happened in the case of Zambia, because Zambia also asked for a 3-month extension to wrap up. Usually the structural reforms is a bit complex. To design and implement. So this is to be expected. Remember when the NPP took over in 2017, there was a 1-year extension of that particular program. Okay, because otherwise, normally after election excesses, usually you need to do a lot to bring the program back.
Thank you very much.
And all of that. So this is normal.
Professor May,
yes.
Quickly, finally on this.
So I will just say that I think, first of all, I know the president had been absolutely adamant that the program will not be extended.
True.
I think we should view this particular extension slightly differently. It's not the extension of a year where we were struggling to meet indicators. The macroeconomic targets have been met and exceeded. But the concern is that the underlying reforms that will ensure that these are sustained have delayed. And several of them have been missed. And, and it cuts across all sectors. In fact, there was a portion where it sort of criticized the Bank of Ghana for continuing multiple currency practices. And all of these are there. It tells you there are issues related to, corruption. The part about how to deal with declaration of assets and code of conduct for public sector workers. All of these have been delayed. And I think clearly what it means is that by the time there's a staff level agreement on the sixth and final review, there are certain reforms and documentations will not be ready. I think that's why there's this suggestion, whether it came from the government or it came from the IMF. It's obvious that there's going to be a 3-month extension. But I think it shouldn't be viewed in a negative light.
Not at all.
It should not be viewed in a negative light at all. Yes. It's to make sure that we finish properly.
And wrap up.
And hopefully this time, we will not be returning at all or not soon.
Thank you. Professor Patrick Eswani, thank you very much.
Yeah, so, Mr. Kansi, the thing is that when you check, right, they say half a loaf is better than none. That's where I want to look at it from. Yes, you talk about the exposure, etc., right? But you see the last point Professor Bobkin made. He's talking about diversification. In other words, means that don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's always been the refrain for over, I mean, God knows how long. That's been the refrain. Even when the Akufo-Addo was coming, it's the same thing. That you can't use one approach. You can't just back your currency with only gold. But it's also the case that no matter how you diversify, you can't say that you're not going to back the currency with gold. Professor Bobkin, do I get that? Do I get that?
Gold, as part of our reserve, didn't start today.
Exactly.
It's been part of our reserve management. But now there's a scaling up.
Yes.
And also
so that tells you that it's an eclectic approach. Immunization. So there's no way you would ever say that, listen, we would not back the currency with gold. That is not on the table.
The countries that don't produce gold, they buy it to back their currency.
Exactly. So we need that education. Yeah. That's very clear. That's the point I'm making. So please, let's be very clear that no matter what we say, at the end of the day, we will still need gold to back the currency. As to how we do it, that one, then it varies from government to government. So let's be very clear. You will always need the gold to back the currency. You will always need that gold, at least into the foreseeable future. Maybe when we do well on the virtual assets, Bitcoin, etc. But for now, as I'm seeing it, you will always need the gold. So then, as to how each government does it, then it becomes a question of policy, right, of the government, etc. And so I also agree that, yes, diversification is the key. The only thing is that, like we've said, we've been saying it for, as I said, from the time I was a student to today, right? And it's not even university days. Look, if you go back to the junior secondary school, you open the textbooks. It's in the textbooks there. I hope they haven't changed them, where they'll tell you that our bane is over-reliance on our primary
commodities.
Yes, gold, cocoa. That's been the problem. So for over 35 years now, I've seen it. They've been teaching this from JHS to secondary school to university, etc. PhDs, and the PhD people are here.
That's
and
why we don't revise our lecture notes.
You see. And we are still here making the same way.
Because it's the same. What we said they should do, they haven't done it.
Exactly. So it's there. Look, if you doubt, I'm sure those who have kids in the JHS, let them open the social studies books, etc. It's there. It's there.
They go to universities. The lecture notes are still
too low.
Why you change academic year?
When you do, then you go to university level, 100 economics level, 200, then those economists are with it's still there. And secondary school is still there. So it tells you that that's how we keep repeating. And we will not get tired of repeating that. Look, so citizens of Ghana, those of you at home, where the main problem comes from is your lack of engagement. That is where the problem is. When you decide to engage, when you decide to step in so that you push government will act to diversify the economy well. But when you don't, and you sit aloof and say, oh, politics is for criminals, oh, the bad, etc., it won't work. Look, if you like a practical example that we can use to motivate ourselves, you remember the Galamsey fight. What happened? When you jumped in, all of us jumped in and said, no mining in forests, etc., and that's Professor Bobkin is indicated. You see how government is doing its best. You see the creation of NIMOs, etc. And I like the famous example that as a lawyer, this is a Tiwa Forest case where I lost my job. The time I was taking on the case of a Tiwa Forest, it was very clear to me, even the lawyer going to court, I knew that this case will lose it because once government makes it clear to the court that when we mine bauxite in the Tiwa Forest, we will create millions of jobs, the economy will improve. But I decided to take a leap of faith. I went in and see from 2019. You don't have to win all cases. Exactly. So I decided to go in because my main point at the time was that I'd rather go to court, lose, so that tomorrow when there's trouble, I say, by me, I did my best. I went to court and we lost. But look at what happened. Barely about 5 years on, you see how citizens, you jumped in and you said there will be no mining in forests, and that's been it. So Akufo-Addo last minute had to capitulate. And the same way, President Mahama also incoming in the opposition, campaigning, and then since assuming office, he's made it clear that there will be no more mining in forests. So that's one example when citizens decide to engage when you decide to make your voices heard through TUC, other CSOs, etc. So this diversification, what we are saying is that it's been there. The other name for it, when Akufo-Addo was coming, when he said he would change the Gadgisberg economy, that's his other name. So everything they've been saying here,
reinforcing it.
Excellent. So everything the professors have been saying is Akufo-Addo's Gadgisberg economy, which he said he would come and diversify. And we sat down, we didn't do enough to push. We said planting for food and jobs, and earlier on I said it wasn't revolutionary enough. Today we have what? Feed Ghana, or popularly called
Grow 24.
Grow 24, and also Nkukon Kitten, if you are a food soldier.
I hope you will not chew those chickens.
Excellent. So you see, so please, the key to it is when you decide to engage on the economy, don't leave it to the professors alone. Yes, they are professors, but we also know very clearly that he who feels it knows it. He who feels it knows it. So you know how you struggle to feed your family. So you also know enough economics to be able to make an input. Don't say that Professor Bobkins should speak, Professor Sumi alone should speak. No. You don't need to have read economics anywhere. Once you manage your home, you also can make an input, because after all, Article 36 is clear that, look, no matter what the government does, the key thing is that manage the economy in such a way that we'll have a good standard of living, that we all can afford food, etc. So no matter what Professor Bobkin and the rest come and say, bottom line, the crack, say, is the economy being managed in such a way that we all can have food, we all can have, sustenance, because self-preservation is the first, instinct. Yes, it's the first principle, first instinct. If you don't preserve yourself, if you don't live, would you have opportunity to make the other lofty arguments? And so look, let's repeat just a few provisions of 36. It says, the state shall take all necessary action to ensure that the national economy is managed in such a manner as to maximize the rate of economic development and to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every person in Ghana, and to provide adequate means of livelihood and suitable employment and public assistance to the needy. So there you have it. There you have it. Do the national economy in such a manner as to maximize the rate of economic development and to secure the maximum welfare. Welfare. How are you feeding your family? Is the cost of living crisis killing you? Is the cost of living crisis killing? So if it's killing you, you have the right to say something. It mustn't be left to Professor Bobke, Professor Isumi, and all the professors alone. You see, so let's engage, because if you don't, so how do you engage? You make your voices heard, social media, demonstrations, etc. We did Kumi Preko when we're feeling it, right? We're feeling the hunger. And of course, the hunger hasn't disappeared, but it appears to be ameliorated a bit, because this year there's a bumper harvest, etc. But it doesn't mean, but I know people are still struggling. Yes, people are still struggling to make ends meet. So let's engage more. If you don't engage, everything the professors have told you about diversification, which I said we started learning about 35 years ago, okay, when we became conscious, we'll become, theoretical. We'll just be theoretical. It won't be practical. A few days ago, when the Prime Minister of the UK was addressing his people as part of the Christmas message, he himself, he had to acknowledge, because the citizens kept pressing him. He stammered. They pressed him that, look, times are hard. We are feeling the cost of living crisis. So in his Christmas message, he acknowledged it and said, look, yes, I see there's hardship. They who generally, there are food pantries there. You can go and get food for free, etc. Still, you are struggling there. So if you don't speak up and you say a few people should come here and speak, sorry. Don't speak up. You don't let your voice be heard. Right. I think a few people here, no, government is pressed on all sides. So the one who shouts the loudest generally gets more attention. That's what I can say about this economics. Please, it's not for the experts. He who feels it knows it.
All right. Thank you.
Normally in economics, and also for balance of payment purposes, when we talk about an economy, it's defined to include land area, airspace, territorial waters, the environment, territorial enclaves. So when you say you are managing your economy very well, it cannot be dissociated from the environment and all of that. So that's what I'm saying. If we say we are managing, and the Constitution says let's manage the economy well, we can interpret that to mean that we are also preserving our environment and taking total control. Because these precious minerals, you are a lawyer, they are invested in the state. It's not like they are the property of some individuals who can just mine it the way they want it and export it the way we have to. So the economy is more than just saying inflation. It's more than just saying food and all of that. I agree with the position. The economy can be defined to include security, territorial integrity, water bodies, and all of that. And so when we talk about modeling, you can never talk about economic sustainability without also talking about environmental or ecological integrity.
Okay, thank you. Professor Bokin, so, you add the bit about value addition. When you mentioned it, I had indicated earlier that there's a component of the GoldBod operations that actually addresses that, but is in the process of scaling it up to expand the value addition to gold. Because I know there's some partnership with some refineries to add value to the gold as well. So that's part of their operations. I just needed to put that on record.
You see, this morning, I have had the benefit of being reminded of the concepts that I had to go through in the economic department of the University of Ghana, and particularly focusing on value addition and diversification, all that we have done in the universities. Most of the time, the policies are good, but the management of such policies, the implementation of these policies, and the other component of human resource, the human resource that we apply to the natural resources that we have. You see, we don't achieve the results that we anticipate. And let's take the issue of even sanitation in Ghana. There was a Ministry of Sanitation in Ghana created. The expectation was that we were going to have a cleaner city in 100 days. Is that right? Then, very important. Very important policy, very interesting one. And my expectation was that we'll get a hands-on person to make sure it happens. And at the end of the day, somebody sits in Accra and will not even move and see whether we are implementing the program. At the end of the day, we all lose out. Nothing happens. A whole ministry for so years, and that concept of managing the sanitation fizzles out. And so when we talk about the whole economy and we leave out the human aspect of it, then again we create the problems. The value addition, it has been on the table for the longest while. When I was at Frizzos, that was one of the things that I was promoting. Let's get the companies that will add value to our natural products. Otherwise, we are lost in the international markets. When you go there with all your cassava, plantain, and all that, people will just apply technology and change the face of it, and they will make the money, and we will count the losses. So I think that the report, as has come to us, clearly from a contextual prescription, there is a presumption of acceptance of the loss, because all this vocabulary will not take away the loss. The loss is there, and they are finding different ways of telling us that we have lost. So when we say, let's wait for audited accounts.
What the Bank of Ghana is saying is, the element of speculation they identify or go with there is that there's an audit that's ongoing.
Yes,
wait
I know.
for the audit to be completed.
Yes, I know, but
before
there is
you
always
make a specific
there is a signal that there is loss, and the quantum is that which an audit will bring out. Again, there is a possibility of us also looking at the whole value chain to see other areas of loss that has not been also quantified in this. And I gladly, Prof. also mentioned the environmental loss, environmental cost. It has not also been factored into the calculation. So at the end of the day, when we do the value chain analysis, we will see that the loss is even greater than what has been. This is fiscal loss. But in terms of depreciation and all that, when they put everything together, we see that we'll be counting more losses. So, and that shouldn't also discourage us. Once we have the resources, what if we apply other resources, the metallic resources, we apply other resources like technology, human resource, and all that, we should have an improved situation, not rather a deficit at the end of the total calculation. So the drivers of policy is also important. The people who will make sure it happens is also important. I had a chance to be in a meeting as chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, and we were discussing international issues on environment. It so happened that the minister who was supposed to even drive the vision didn't understand what was going on. And on the quiet, somebody came to my room, told me, you have to redeem this. You see, why do you get somebody like that to lead it when he can't do it? Or she or he cannot do it? And then you go behind the meeting and tell us to go and redeem the image of the country. So the appointing system, all these things happening. Look at the education you have had this morning. And these hands are left idle, and they are stuck in the university campuses, 4 walls.
No, we are working.
Four walls. No. What I'm saying is that we should exploit it even better. You see, you can't only be working in university when we need these brains in the center of decision making, and people are confined to universities. We don't association between the academia and industry so important. Who is to bridge that gap? We can bring a trade minister who will sit in an office 24 hours a day, go home and come back the next morning, and not relating industry to academia. And this is where we even lose the import of research. So, to me, it is good that we have seen it from the beginning. What is important is to make sure that we find the loss points within the value chain and address them, and make sure that, in fact, most of the natural resource contracts, I've said it many times, natural resource contracts, we sign contracts with foreign interest, and all that we get is a threshold of 5%, 3%, 5% of royalty threshold, and we are happy as a country. When other people are signing contracts, gaining 50% of returns.
Royalties.
Right.
So we are losing.
We are losing even the royalty threshold is zero.
And that's why you say you laud the GoldBod program in the intervention.
The program is good.
Yes, as a starting point, but we can do better.
But there was a question that was to, and I want you to you would answer that together with Professor. Please,
but if you yes,
sorry.
Okay. Yes. So now I'm happy also that having looked at the constitutional review, I'm happy that at least some pre-acquisition owners are being attended to now. From the review, we'll come to that. But yes, I'm happy that we are looking at the resources of the country and how best can we mobilize those resources for the interest and use of the whole country, not for people who are privileged to be appointed to positions like that and take advantage. So,
as for the concern review, we'll get into that.
We'll get into that, but I'm just flagging it because I'm so happy that the Constitutional Review Committee, they have looked at the interests of pre-acquisition owners who have been cheated all this while. I'm happy it is happening. When we get there, I'll just bring out examples and even relate to the case of Nitetetru and what has happened post Nitetetru.
Okay.
So, Ahmed, I think that as a country, let's go back to the drawing board. It is not too late. We have attempted, but we have not done. So let's go back to it. We have the brains. We have the resources. We have the legislation. We need to also create the people who will make sure our expectations are met with the combination of all that which we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. Professor Abdallah Ali Nachia, good morning to you. He sends a message. He says, the Queen Mother who stopped Galamsey and seized equipment is an example of the community getting involved in the charge of preventing Galamsey, as rightly stated by Honorable Adiapia Kobe some time ago. I commend him and his work and commitment in his constituency before he exited in the fight against illegal mining. It says Professor Abdallah Ali Nachia.
He's my classmate.
He's your classmate?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much.